A warm hello on day 3 of Climate Conversations at HLF 2026. The Stream Climate Conversations is put together by EkoGalaxy, which is a platform for climate education. We're the UNESCO Greening Education Partner, and we work with schools in India and Europe. The founders are here, Shreyas and myself, Urvi, and essentially, thank you. Essentially, it is our dream to build nature-rich futures for ourselves, but as well, the beautiful, the rich, the life-sustaining biodiversity that we are so very lucky to share our planet with. We try each year to bring at HLF meaningful, nuanced, and enduring sessions to our audiences. Before we begin this session, EkoGalaxy begins each session with an acknowledgement. The land on which we gather, and perhaps the land on which we live, once belonged to our city's rocks, trees, insects, birds, and countless other living beings that are indigenous to this land. We acknowledge this in the spirit of solidarity, humility, and a respect for our shared existence on the planet. All right, so the first session of today is Ye Himalaya Kahan Hai? Biodiversity in the backyard. It's a conversation between the thoughtful, the curious, the wonderful Rithika Fernandes of Round Sustain. Round Sustain, as many of you may know, does incredible enduring work in the field, and EkoGalaxy is always so happy to collaborate with them. And Lalitha Krishnan, author of the delightful, the lovely, the Stray Dogs of Landu Network, and host of the Heart of Conservation podcast. Please also don't forget to pick up her book at the bookstore right outside our venue after this session. We're absolutely thrilled to have the both of you. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for our audiences for showing up day after day, session after session. Because all of us want to know, Ye Himalaya kahan hai? The floor is now yours.
Thank you, Urvi. Thank you, Shreyas. It is an absolute pleasure to be spending the next hour with you all, and an absolute honor to be able to open up the final day of the climate conversations here at the Hyderabad Literary Festival. My name is Rithika Fernandes. I am an ecologist, and I've worked on water conservation, I've worked to climate-proof cities, and now I work with an organization called Round Sustain. It's a not-for-profit platform that talks about stories of India's wildlife and its wild spaces. And I think it would be remiss of me to open up a session here without quoting an author. So I'm going to do that. There is a writer based in Mussoorie who I'm sure many of you have heard of. His name is not Ruskin Bond. That is close. His name is Ganesh Saili. And he said something. He said, "There's something in the water that makes everyone in Landor tell stories." And I think that's the greatest pivot for me to move into introducing this lovely lady next to me. But I'm only going to give you 2 pieces of information that you already know. Her name is Lalitha Krishnan, and she's written this book, The Stray Dogs of Landor Network. And I do this because I have 3 objectives today. You know, you can take the ecologist out of the reports, but you can't take the reports out of the ecologist, I like to say. The first objective I have is for you to get to know Lalitha through our conversation. The second is for you to get to know her book a little bit more. And finally, I hope to be able to answer the question, or we hope to be able to answer the question, Ye Himalaya kahan hai? It's a very simple geographic question. I think we all know where the Himalayas are. But I think what we want to do is invite you into Lalitha's backyard in the Himalayan foothills, not as tourists and not as experts, but people with a curiosity to learn. So with that, if I may, Lalitha, I'd like to read a little section from your book, which hopefully situates us all in the place that Lalitha once called home. Where Mussoorie ends, Landor Bazaar begins. In the summer, the cool breeze mingles with the greasy aroma of refried oils from sweet shops. Taxis zip past, blaring Gadwali music, narrowly missing your toes. If you pay attention, you'll notice dogs everywhere, striding along familiar routes like they own the place. And in a way, they do. But they're not the only ones that call Landor home. Lalitha, when you wrote this, you were already thinking of Landor as a neighborhood rather than a place to visit. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. But I'd just like to thank you all, Rithika. So first, is it on? Yeah, thank you, Rithika, for so graciously, agreeing to this conversation with me and Shreya Survey, and especially all the volunteers who have made this such a fabulous Lit Fest. So thank you. To answer your question, I've been breathing the rarefied air of Landor for 12 years, when I started writing this book. And I moved here from Ranikhet, which is, in the eastern part, while Landor is on the sort of northwest. So there are two sides of the state of Uttarakhand. Ranikhet is in Kumaon, and Landor is near Mussoorie. It's a kind of little sister town of Mussoorie, and in the Gadwal side. So to answer your question, that's a total of actually 25 years in the hills. So yes, I think the Himalaya, I was very much part of the Himalaya, and in many ways it is a part of my being, But if you give me a minute, I'd like to tell a little more about Landor and Mussoorie, just to compare them. So Landor is at around 7,000 plus feet, and it has the most beautiful mixed forest of oaks and rhododendrons, and the stately deodar, that is the Himalayan cedar, that lives for over 500 to 600 years. So they're like the most amazing trees. And we have all of this in Ranikhet, but we also have pine, which I'd like to talk about later. And Landor is very steep, while Ranikhet is sort of gentler. We even have a golf course run by the military, by the army. And both are cantonments, but Landor was set up, by the British as a convalescing station outpost for wounded soldiers. So there's a part of Landor that is still called the Sisters' Bazaar, bazaar where the sisters, the nurses, looked after the wounded soldiers. Yeah, I just wanted to introduce both places.
Thank you. That's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, they're both sort of, two different balconies to the Himalaya, if you're from two different corners of the state.
So the Kumaon on one end and the Gadwal on the others, right? On the other end. And Lalitha has lived in Bombay. She summered in Trivandrum, very, very opposite to the places that she ended up living in. And I think she had a year in the US. You cooked in Wyoming, is what you told me. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you ended up in the Himalayan foothills.
Yeah. So, I confess, I'm a Keralite, a fish and rice person. And but I grew up in Bombay, again by the sea. And I think our outings in school were, always to just picnics. And then when I was in college, which I barely attended, used to take long weekends to escape to the beach. And I think most of my adult years, every evening I used to sit on the wall in Carter Road and just look out at the sea. So I definitely considered myself a sea person. But life is so unpredictable. I married a mountaineer, and that's how we ended up in Ranikhet with two little children. And the thing was about Ranikhet, from moving to a one-house door in Bombay, we moved into this whole old colonial house with like 12 to 15 doors. There were doors in front, then all the rooms, then there were many toilets. They all had doors, and they were all rotting doors through which, every kind of critter came through, woke us up in the middle of the night, So, and that was one of the challenges. And the other one was, keeping yourself warm and keeping an old colonial house warm. And that is still a challenge to us, even where we are now in a new house. But I think somewhere, the mountains challenge you, but they change you. I think somewhere I became a mountain person, and I welcome anything that comes into my house at any time of the day. To give you an example, one night we woke up to 2 bats circling in our bedroom, and we realized there's no way we could catch a bat. I don't think even Rohit Chakrabarti would. So we just put the blanket overhead and slept till morning. And by morning, they had plastered themselves to the curtain and, we helped them get out. So that's life. You adapt. You adapt just like everything in the wild does.
I've met so many people in Hyderabad. The chipkalis, the bullies that enter the house, everyone's afraid of them mortally. I think I used to be the official lizard catcher because I don't mind them at all. My mom used to tell us stories when we were young about Lizzie and Larry, the lizards. So my brother and I grew up with a curiosity for it, and I feel like people, I think, lose that curiosity as they get older. So I can see why, 2 bats inside the bedroom wouldn't really set the mood, but, it's lovely to hear that kind of story. But there is something that I wanted to mention. When Lalitha and I were talking about this session, I referred to the area as the Himalayas, and Lalitha corrected me and said, no, Himalaya. And so I think it would be nice if you can tell us what's behind that choice for you, Lalitha.
Okay, so when we lived in Ranikhet, we got acquainted with Bill Aitken, the travel writer, and he says he's a traveler who writes, not a writer who travels. So he's also a spiritual seeker and a great lover of the Nanda Devi and the Himalaya. So he's the one who, and when we came to Lando, he actually lived in Mussoorie. We got better acquainted, and he was a great inspiration to me, and he in fact wrote the foreword to my book. So he's the one who used to say, there is only one Himalaya. And if you look at a satellite, picture of the Himalaya, like extending from, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Bhutan, Nepal, China, etc., you see like an accordion, it is sort of one piece. So that picture sort of stuck in my head. So I only say Himalaya. But there is no right and wrong, and MS Word won't let you type Himalaya. But it's a choice I made.
Yeah, I love that choice. And we chose the title for today, Ye Himalaya Kahan hai? And I think we should let the audience into that backstory that led up to this question,
Yeah, so, Landor is an absolute tourist magnet in summer because everyone from Delhi, Chandigarh, everyone who's close enough to drive up will. But, they don't realize that the roads there are fairly steep, as I mentioned, and they were made for horse buggies or something, And so when they come up, they're usually stuck in a jam for about 3 hours, and all you can smell is burning clutch plates and tires. So by the time they get to the top of the ridge, which is sort of a cemented thing, path which is narrow, and it's usually hazy. They see the trees, but they don't see the trees, and they wonder what the fuss is about because they're hungry, they're irritated, and they don't see anything. They don't know what they're looking for, They don't, and of course, you don't see the mountains in summer because the famous haze comes up. So every time we go up to the ridge, there are people asking, Ye Himalaya kahan hai? Ye Himalaya cheese kya hai? I mean, they don't understand that the soil they're standing on, the air they're breathing, the bird songs that they're hearing, it's all part of the Himalayan ecosystem. So they get really irritated, and there are more tourists like them. That's all they see. So it's like...
that reminds me of when people go on safaris, and I hope no one here is, guilty of that. But everyone only wants to see tigers, and they miss all the fun wildlife that comes along the way. So I see what you mean when you talk about this.
Yeah, and, I want to explain, it's not a very great picture, but what you see there also in winter is called the winter line. So what happens is it's a rare atmospheric phenomenon that happens only in few parts of the world. And I didn't know this till I was there. And basically when the warm air from the plains meets the cold air of the mountains, it's sort of the light refracts and creates this beautiful false horizon. It's like a backlit, orange, sharp ribbon across the sky. It's really terrific to see. And if any of you are old enough to know the Pink Floyd album cover, Dark Side of the Moon, it tells you exactly how light refracts, but only the orange is seen in this case.
Yeah, yes. I was in Mussoorie, I think in 2019, and I went there, I think in October, and that's when I saw this very, very famous Landor winter line. And it's beautiful because you see oranges, you see yellows, and a little bit of mauve, and the sun sets almost twice, if you're lucky enough to see it. So that sounds absolutely lovely.
Yeah.
I didn't know the Pink Floyd. Oh yeah, it's a little prism.
A prism, no?
Yes.
I just thought of that. I thought how light refracts, yeah.
Well,
when... Ah, okay.
When people hear Landor in the Himalayas, they probably often imagine snow-capped peaks, they imagine, mist and quiet. But for you, Landor is far more intimate. It's been a living neighborhood of dogs and birds and wild creatures and people. And they're all negotiating space, they're negotiating belonging, they're negotiating survival. And you say in your book that it is the perfect setting for a secret network of animals, critters, and nature lovers, even miserable ones like myself. Now, let me just say why Lalitha calls herself miserable. She was holed up at home during the COVID-19 pandemic, like most of us were. Lucky for her, she had far better views than the rest of us. But she also was struggling with osteoarthritis, right? So she was limited in her mobility. And so maybe, Lalitha, you can tell us a little bit about that, but also, what does a normal day in your backyard in a place like this look like? Just paint us a picture.
Yeah, actually, a normal, ordinary day, I don't think there's such a thing in the Himalaya. Because, I wake up at 5 a.m. to this most melodious, beautiful song sung by the blue whistling thrush on my roof at 5 a.m. However bad your day has been, it just makes me smile, So usually I just head out with my coffee, my filter coffee, which I don't give up on, and to see what's at my water bowl. You can see the water bowl here in this picture. And usually in the morning, there's a lot of traffic. It's the Khalij pheasants are doing the rounds. They have a route, and so they do a certain route, and there are all these little foraging birds that come together. It's amazing. There are great barbets that go left to right from tree to tree before they end up at the water bowl. And it's funny, you'd never see water fights at the water bowl like you would see at a water tanker, for instance. And then, this yellow-throated martin came in at 10 a.m., which is so I was so surprised. So basically, I also have a camera trap. I try to catch the nightlife at the water bowl. And so I see the Indian hare, I see the Indian crested porcupine, and even birds. During nesting season, they sort of working so hard, they come for a final dip at 7 p.m. I've got the gray-winged blackbird, they just dunk themselves in like a soak. And I have two bowls, one for shallower for little birds and a deeper one. So it's amazing the nightlife that happens, when we are asleep. Yeah. And also, the creatures I never knew existed. I've seen the Himalayan shrew at the water bowl, and that is something I've seen twice in my life. So that was, and I've written about it in the book, yeah, in detail.
Yeah, as an ecologist, when I saw the yellow-throated martin, I managed to get a glimpse of this animal. It is very, very difficult to spot. So Lalitha here has been seeing a lot more wildlife than I have seen, and I'm so jealous. And she's dabbled actually in so many different things. You've a background in communications and advertising. You've cooked for the National Outdoor Leadership School student groups. You've taught spoken English, and she is a certified dog trainer. So Lalitha, you weren't trained as a scientist. But observation seems quite central to how you understand this landscape, right? How did that become your choice and your way of being?
So I think, sorry, I'll just change that. So I think it was a bit of curiosity. I have insatiable, curiosity. And I also have a love for documenting. And I got that from my father. We have like trunk and suitcases full of albums from the 1950s. And I still, once a year I try to print out my favorite photographs and just sort of keep those. So I think it's this combined love for, documenting and my curiosity that makes me want to know more. And when I want to know more, of course, for example, to give an example, if I see a bird, displaying a certain behavior, or I don't know that bird, I'll go straight on, on the net and check out the bird. And that makes me want to observe it, so I'll keep photographing it, and, then I'll... So I think I develop an interest and notice more behavior. I've seen birds wash the bugs before eating it. I've seen birds, soak their nesting material before they... So there's so much to see, and I think just having I never knew a bowl of water would be a segue into, this world of wildlife and understanding their behavior, but that is the case over here. So that's one thing, yeah. And I wanted to tell you something more. So I think that's it. I think my understanding of landscapes, therefore, is passion-driven, but also, aided by science. I wanted to, can I give you an example of something?
Absolutely.
So, like Rithika was mentioning, that's fine. I'll talk about it later. I want to talk about something.
Well, your book grew out of the same backyard, particularly when a brindled, beautiful stray dog named Pretty entered your life. And in your words, she quietly rearranged it. So, being a dog trainer, I think Lalitha decided to take it upon herself to train this dog. But there was a turning point when you realized that you were learning more from her and the pack that she introduced you to, rather than what you were teaching them. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I started training Pretty, first of all, with the intention that she'd be more adoptable. That was my first intent. And the pack constantly taught me something or the other, So Pretty and I started off as strangers, like it is with stray dogs. They just come up at the time. I just qualified as a trainer, and my dogs had died, and I didn't have a dog to train. And one day, this dog just turns up at my doorstep with no reason at all, And so first thing, she needed to be fed. So I fed her for a few days, and I decided, here is this dog I can train. And I started training her. And it was amazing because she would come on the dot every morning at 8 o'clock. She'd do, I was also new at training. I'd fumble around. But here was this, most patient, hungry dog waiting for me, doing everything I asked her to. Now, so the thing is, the thing about training dogs is if they don't get it right, it's probably the trainer's fault, They're not communicating what they need to the dog, so the dog is confused and doesn't get it right. And another thing about training dogs is if you give them a task to do and they sort of do it 15 times, then you can stop doing it because they've understood it. They do it correctly 15 times. So I had, during my training, seen this video where this dog is walking backwards and stops when its hind leg is on the mat. For some crazy reason, I decided I'm going to make this Pretty do this. That was really dumb of me. But I decided, and it was challenging for her and me. I'd never done it before. But we started it, and a few days on, she did it. And I was so amazed. She had the intelligence and the patience, and always her eyes were focused on me. She would never shift her eyes, And then I started challenging them myself and her. I added gestures to the thing. I stopped talking and with gestures, and she started walking more. And then she did it right. Then I started adding distance from 3 steps. We went on to 10. We went on to 15. And one day, she walked all the way back. And again, like I said, we did it 15 times. At the end of it, when she did that, I just broke down. Because, I'm sorry. I didn't know why I made this miserable, hungry dog do this. I felt she deserved better, and I shouldn't have done it. But the question was why I did it. The question was, why did she, turn up all alone every day on the dot and do whatever I asked for her? And the answer is, it was her survival, And few days in, she brought her pup, and it was all very clear to me that she was just doing it for her survival. So I questioned my own self, my intentions. Yeah, sorry about that.
Sorry, my mic has gone off.
You want mine?
Yeah. I think we all needed a moment that was really emotional. I also have 2 dogs at home, and I am a miserable trainer because I have no boundaries. In fact, I think my dogs are training me to be more lazy. So Lalitha, please give me some notes. Do you want a moment? Yeah? Please buy Lalitha's book. It's really lovely how she writes about this there. And I think a central theme running in her book is something called Ubuntu. And she says that the dogs practice this quiet form of Ubuntu. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what that looked like in your daily life and how you've woven that into your book, because it seems to be what the book rests on.
So Ubuntu is this South African concept of paying it forward. So basically, if you profit or you get something good, you share. It's so simple, you're just sharing some of your luck. And I saw this constantly with Pretty, like I said, after I made her do that task, she trusted me so much. And she used to come alone, and one fine day, she came with her little pup called Karma. I mean, she waited till she trusted me, to do that. And then I used to train Karma, and it is ridiculous because, I used to not leash them, and he was so eager and so bright and so cute, basic commands like down and sit and all that he did. Then after that, she brought her immediate pack, which was astounding because there were 2 females and they were not even related to her. But they were an all-female pack of dogs looking after this pup, Karma. And before I knew it, there were dogs from other side of the hill trailing in, and they would all come and I used to feed them all. And so she was it's like she told the whole pack, listen, there's this pushover on the hillside who's giving free food. Aajao, khalo, maza karte hain. And they used to just hang around my porch. That for me is Ubuntu, if you ask me. And it's in a funny way, then during the rains in the Himalaya, it's cold, icy rain. It's not like the warm rain that our film actors dance in a way. It's like icy, really hailstones sometimes. And these dogs didn't have a shelter, so I made a dog house. And Pretty knew immediately it was for her and her pet, her Karma. And but every time the neighborhood dogs came, she would just, let them have the dog out. She would let them have, a part of her food. It is quite amazing to see this dog be so generous. Someone who's so hungry is so generous. That was quite astounding for me to see. Yeah.
And beyond the dogs, of course, we've touched a little bit upon this, but your days are filled with many other lives. What Lalitha writes in her book is this: the part of Landor where my husband and I lived felt like a quiet paradise. Beneath the dense canopy and along the dirt slopes, a hidden community of stray dogs, including Pretty, carried on with their secret lives. Himalayan langurs leapt onto our tin roof, peering down at us through the skylight with curious intent. Yellow-throated martins, which you've just seen, scrambled up devdars in search of bird eggs, while red giant flying squirrels glided between trunks like trapeze artists. Ghorals scaled precarious cliffs, and jackals, sambar, and kakar moved as silently as thieves. The cows grazed through the day with copper bells chiming softly. their music fading into the distance by dusk. Then, as darkness settled, the leopards, the porcupines, civets, and nightbirds emerged, sniffing, plotting, and hunting. Lalita, tell us more about this.
Okay, the two or three, this is, I'll just talk about the ants carrying flowers. Yeah, it's okay. So this, it's really funny, like I was mentioning before, I sit out with my coffee to see what the birds are up to. And I just saw this flower walking past me. And I literally, I rubbed my eyes because I said, what am I seeing here? And then I noticed that it was a little ant, carrying this a little flower that's way bigger than it in its mouth. Now, what is an ant carrying a flower for? Then I noticed there were a whole lot of ants carrying flowers from the ground, flowers that had fallen. And I started, observing them literally for 3 days, in the mornings and evenings. And I noticed they were taking it down the steps, they're crossing the corridor, going to a step, and depositing the flower in a corner, in the crack in the line between two steps. And I didn't understand what was happening. Then when I looked closely, I didn't want to disturb them, but I took my camera and sort of from a distance, I looked at, tried to focus on it. And I realized that below the flowers were hidden carcasses of all possible insects, other ants, moths, beetles. And it was like a stockpile of food. And it also looked like a funeral because they were covered with this beautiful little florets, all of one color. And so naturally, like they were just dropped there. And then I saw these ants go up the crack. They were carrying like bigger ant heads and other insects in the crack, and followed by a flower. Carrying this, so they were just, sort of they're camouflaging the stockpile, and they were taking it all up. And there was another ant at the top of the hole in the wall receiving it. There were quite a few. So that was one thing I noticed. I have no idea what they're doing, but it was quite funny. And what else?
And that's a really good story about beer-loving hornets. Maybe you can tell us about that.
So, yeah, we don't have much for entertainment in the hills. No, I didn't say I was drinking beer. No, so we were out at a friend's place for lunch, and while we were having lunch, we got attacked by two, giant Asian hornets. I mean, two of them were enough to make us jump out of our seat because these guys are called murder hornets because they actually attack beehives, they kill bees, imagine, and they eat the larva. So then we realized they were coming for the beer. They weren't coming for us. When we realized that, we moved the beer to the grass and we continued with our lunch. But of course, I'm a curious cat and I wanted to know why they're going for the beer. So I don't know so basically they were, beer has sugar, and so they were getting a quick sugar buzz of fix, and also this was in November. By that time, all the flowers and everything have sort of dried up. Only the tree dahlias, usually they go for the tree dahlias, but they weren't any where my friend's house was. So it went for the beer. Then I don't know if any of you remember The Gods Must Be Crazy. Have any of you seen it? You remember the scene where the elephants get drunk on eating fruit? Okay? So turns out these little insects can digest 80% ethanol without getting a buzz compared to those elephants, So they just digest this, and they have a symbiotic relationship with yeast, which they have in their gut. So
wow.
It's quite amazing.
I mean, they can brew their own beer in there.
But they won't get high.
That's a superpower. As we get older, I think we should all be like murder hornets because when the alcohol hits you the next morning, it becomes harder. When I was the one time I was in Landor, something really stands out in my memory because I am a birder. And I kind of have I've graduated to being something called a twitcher, which is somebody who marks birds off their list, new birds. So we get really excited when we see new birds. So we go birding every time we travel. And one of the locals told me about the Indian cuckoo. And it's very interesting because the Indian cuckoo sounds a bit like this. Not so weak and, but what they told me was, and I really find this interesting, that it sounds to them, there's an onomatopoeic, form of this, that's all across the Indian cuckoo's distribution, so many different interpretations. But in the hills, in Garhwal especially, they say that it's Kafal Pakko, Maina Chakko. Okay, so I was humming this to myself so I would remember Kafal Pakko, Maina Chakko. And what does that mean? It means that the bayberry tree, it comes into fruit around the time that the cuckoo is seen. And the phrase means the bayberries are fruiting, but I haven't tasted any. And there are different interpretations of this. There are more mournful versions in China. There are more mournful versions in Himachal. In Kerala, I think it's a jackfruit thief. The jackfruit thief has come, or something like that. So, you also started noticing specific patterns. Who appears when, who arrives together, and who returns every year. Can you tell us some more about that?
In November, the sunflowers start drying up in the hills. It's different in the plains, I suppose, but that's the time everyone plucks, takes the seed head if you want to plant it again. But about 2 or 3 years ago, I saw this yellow-breasted greenback finches coming just for this seed, and they'd come at different times of the day. The seed head is black and dried up, and this beautiful bird with, yellow and green and almost camouflaging with the stem of the sunflower. It is so beautiful to photograph, so that's one thing that comes. Around June, July, it's always connected sometimes to two different species, and the time of year, or it's annual. These birds come from just in Uttarakhand itself, but they come down to a lower altitude. Then this is beautiful, cutest little Indian bush rat. I don't know if you've seen it. I had put a picture of it there. And it looks like a pika, but it has a tail. So, and bright-eyed little thing that lives in the wall that's covered with beautiful pink and white, daisy-like flowers called fleabane. And I wish I could have photographed it on the wall anyway, but so it stays there, and when it comes out at 4 o'clock and it starts nibbling grass, that's when I caught it, And I know it is short-lived after observing it for 2 years, because at that very time, another beautiful, olive green, yellow creature comes, and that is the Himalayan trinket snake. And it is not afraid. I've seen it walk in front of my feet, go exactly to this hole in the wall, and then I don't see this Indian bush rat again. But I still look forward to it. I still hope it comes every year.
Yeah, and I think the trinket snake is a lovely snake, right?
Yeah, it's also called the rat snake, but till I saw it up close, I didn't realize how pretty it is.
Yeah, it's called a rat snake as well, because we've got a rat snake already.
Yeah, no,
That's
this
strange.
one, but it's kind of yellow-green, but I got experts to ID it. I didn't myself.
The French zoologist François Daudin in the 1800s was so taken by the beauty of the trinket snake that he named it after the beauty of Helen of Troy. So that's how beautiful the snake is, and it's very adaptive. You find it in cities, and it is non-venomous, so you don't have to worry about it. Catches rats. Deepu, I'm looking at you. It's not going to catch a human being, so, treat your snakes with respect, is all I want to say.
Another thing that, is almost annual is April is a month of fires. For some, we just dread it in the hills because everything is stark dry, it's full of pine needles. I was talking about pine needles. They're highly inflammable. The tree itself is inflammable. They tap it for resin. and nothing grows under it. So, you know, one cigarette lit stub is enough to burn hectares of, you know, forest. And it somehow April is horrible. Last year was the only year started raining in April and didn't stop till September, which is crazy. But we were grateful there were no fires. My dog once saved us from a fire that almost engulfed my house and all the neighborhood houses. And his mother just collapsed because the air was so bad. Yeah, so that's one thing that happens in April. I'm sorry.
We're romanticizing the Himalayas here, but Nanda Devi was burning.
Yeah, it was.
And the reason is that there is not enough of winter rain and snow. And so the ground is so dry that even, you know, accidental fires can just spark off a huge wildfire. So, you know, when we go as tourists to places like these, we're always looking for the Himalayas, we're looking for all of these different things. We don't stop to think about our impact on the landscapes that we visit. And I think if you can come away with something today, it would be to be a bit more curious about the place you're going to and what the locals have to deal with, because the mountains are beautiful, but they're also struggling with climate change, the impacts of climate change. And I guess this is where I could bring in your podcast, Heart of Conservation. Through the conversations that you've had with various scientists working in different landscapes, were there any specific conversations that, you know, changed the way you see your own backyard? Can you tell us something?
Yeah, sure. You know, I'll just give a little background if you don't mind. I've done a citizens, you know, nature enthusiast course at the Wildlife Institute in India, and that really opened my eyes to the number of fabulous scientists doing incredible work in our country. I mean, it is amazing and it's hidden. So I really wanted to follow these guys and write stories, you know, but you know, and then I had physical ailments, the pandemic. I mean, I couldn't do it. So that's how I started the Heart of Conservation, and because I just wanted to learn and share, and that's what I did. And with every guest I've spoken to, I've learned something new, you know. But there's one guest that really made an impact on my understanding of dog behavior. And he is a gentleman who has collared wolves. And he's a wolf expert. And I could draw comparisons between, you know, the way wolves move, the way they communicate, and dogs, you know, the way the pack sticks together. In the wolf family, they're yearlings. They're like 1 or 2 year old wolves, you know, sub-adults, I think, and they don't leave the pack till they are 2 or 3 because they look after their siblings, you know, or the new babies and the pups in the pack. And I saw that sort of relationship between Barbara and Fluffy and Pretty, where I mean, they weren't even related, you know, not immediately, but they were looking after the pup.
And it takes a village, right?
Yeah. And the thing is, it's called alloparenting, where you look after, you know, smaller ones without being the parent. So they were like nannies to us. Yeah. So
Ghouls do this as well. Like several canids do this, I think.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about, you know, I think most people may know about this, about how the wolves change the rivers in Yellowstone. But I'd like to quickly just summarize what it is for people who don't know it. So in Yellowstone National Park in US, they had basically all the wolves were eradicated because they were shot down. So they reintroduced the wolves. And when they did that, you know, the elk had been grazing all along and they just sort of ruined the vegetation. Now, because the wolves was there, the predator, also called the keystone species, the wolves started moving. I mean, the elk started moving. So when the elk started moving, the vegetation along the riversides, you know, grew. And because the vegetation grew, the soil along the river stabilized. Now, before that, you know, the rivers were meandering and going all over the place. They started running their course. And because the rivers ran their course, the beavers came. And the beavers started creating pools. And because the pools were there, the fish came back, you know. So the moose had, you know, enough to eat all around. Even the ravens and the coyotes could eat off carcasses that the wolves had left behind. So that's a great picture of coexistence to me.
Yeah, that's lovely. Is this something that you learned from the wolf scientist?
No,
Or is
this
something you came
I'd seen videos of.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
it was a
yeah.
big thing
Yeah,
when they
yeah.
reintroduced it. They didn't realize what impact. But I'd love someone, a scientist, to draw a parallel between how dogs, you know, establish that sort of interconnectedness. I'm sure it's there. It's just not written.
Yeah.
It's an unwritten story.
Yeah, we'd love to hear some stories from you later down the track. And as someone who writes about all these different lives, how do you decide when to step in and when to, intervene and help and when to step back? Where do you draw that line between observation and interference?
This is a very good question, but it's a difficult one for me because, we had rented our house at some point and somebody had told us, the sambar deer comes home. And I'd never seen it in all the years that I'd lived. And one afternoon I was just outside and I suddenly saw this fabulous sambar deer, and it's listed by the IUCN Red List. It's a vulnerable species. So it has to be protected. And it's almost, muscled, almost horse-like, huge deer. And I was so excited, but I managed to get a photograph. And it saw me, and it just in 2 leaps, it had jumped 2 gates, and it went on to the village path. Now, everybody in the village, I heard, hamare khet mein aa gaya, ye wo, everyone was showing off the next day. I also very excited. I posted a picture on Instagram or something, I don't remember. Anyway, a few days later, I heard that they'd killed the deer and the meat was eaten by everyone in the village. I was so crestfallen after that. I felt so terrible. I felt like I was somehow instrumental in making it happen. I wasn't, because nobody just follows me on Instagram. But, it made me very conscious of what I post. And I never immediately try to, the birds know, but everything else, I'm very conscious about not posting something on Instagram on the same day or revealing the location. So that's something I do. And what is my other story? Sorry?
Was it about Pretty?
No. There was this, again, this is where I again intervened. This was this little beautiful whistling thrush that I saw it was flying around with a rope around a string around its leg. For days and days, there's no way, like a bat, you can't just catch a bird, but even then, we tried. We have bamboo in the house. I tore up a pair of pajamas and tried to make a net. It was a ridiculous effort because no bird is going to be caught with the shaky bamboo. But anyway, it never happened. But somehow, my watchman then, while it was resting in the afternoon in a hole in the wall, just got it with its bare hands. And my God, this bird had started hopping from flying. It could fly, but it couldn't, hop fast. It was hopping slowly, So it really wanted to get that string out. But he got the bird, and my hands were shaking because I realized the leg is so delicate. It's like a little stem of a flower. It's so thin, so delicate. So very carefully, we managed to untie the string. And it seemed to know we didn't peck or didn't do anything to us. It's familiar. It's the same one that sings on my roof, knows us. But anyway, it flew off, but after a while, I didn't see it, I think this happens a lot. So again, I'm very conscious about not tying my plants with plastic string and being very, very careful about sorting stuff. Workers come to your house, and we don't have garbage collection like in the cities. We have to separate everything. The food goes to my grass cutter will take it for our cows. If they're bones, they'll go for our dogs. My husband has to make 2 trips for bottles and cardboard. And, we have to really, really be very careful very conscious of what we use, because it just doesn't go off on its own. You have to take care of it. Yeah.
So I guess we're almost out of time,
I'm so
but
sorry.
we've spent a lot of time in your Himalayan backyard. But if someone from Hyderabad was to step onto their balcony or into their garden, what would you suggest they do, Lalitha?
Well, I think, first of all, you have to be more receptive to the outdoors. We always think of it as something apart, or we are something apart, we are superior, we are this and this, the rest of the world. I think if you're not into nature and you want to be don't go seeking something. I would say if you have a balcony or a quiet space, just, for a few days, just close your eyes, just breathe in the air, let the breeze, feel the breeze on your skin, listen to the bird song, and do that for a couple of days, and you'll be surprised what nature throws back at you, what rewards you get. And I think wherever we are, in whatever situation, we're not always in places we want to be in. I think we have to adapt to the environment we are in. That's important. And also, learn to share space and resources. Do the whole Ubuntu thing. I think that's it.
Thank you. And I think so much of what we've discussed today comes down to this, paying attention. You notice the things that stand out of the ordinary. And you see the Himalayas not as peaks, but as the ground under your feet. You look at the Himalayas or the space that you inhabit in the relationships you share, not with your fellow sitting next to you, but with the animals that you're sharing space with. And hopefully in those quiet moments, you learn a little bit more about coexistence. Now, Lalitha's book, The Stray Dogs of Landor Network, is available to purchase outside at the festival. So please do yourself a favor and go buy it. And hopefully today, with this conversation, we're hoping that you take an inspiration to go look into your backyard, to look into your balcony a little bit more, and maybe see your own street with new eyes. Because as Lalitha has shown us, the Himalayas are closer than we think. Thank you, everyone. If there are any questions for Lalitha and myself. Okay, we've gone over time. So if you'd like to talk to us, we're available after the session. Thank you so much for being a wonderful audience.